So today we've got Joe Hayes with us again. Joe was talking about the Power of Eight group on Friday, but today he's going to talk about Stansted Hall, which is Arthur Findlay College in Stansted. And you know a lot about it because of the work you did for many years. So you wanted to just let us know some of the things that you came across when you were working. Well, you tell the story anyway, Joe. I don't want to give away too much. I do know it, but
Well, it was really interesting because I had been to Stansted a number of times before this specific event happened. And because my friend, the doctor, who used to lecture there, and he had been there many times, and I had been there with him many times, and it was an amazing place. But this one time, I got invited to an open day, and I went, and the details of the open day were so synchronistic that it was just beyond words. But I went, and the person that had invited me said, would you like to go in and have a reading from one of the mediums? And I said, no, that's not really, that's not me. I don't do that. In my arrogance. But I went, and it was about 15 or 20 minutes. And then after the reading, the woman said, I must tell you this. When you walked in this door, there was this tall being that walked in behind you. And I thought, oh, and I thought it may have been the doctor because he had lectured there a number of times. So I pulled out a photo that I had, and she said, no, that's not it. She said, this is someone who's been with you for a long time, and they're trying to work with you, but you have certain attitudes and they can't get through. And I thought, wow, that was really, it struck home. It was really meaningful. And that's why I went into NLP and learned the power of language. But it was always in my diaries, Jackie, and I kept diaries, spiritual diaries, for years. I would always address it to my higher self or my soul or even the doctor at some point. Just, it was never consistent. But when I heard about this philosopher that had been with me for many times, I asked the name. He said, no, the names don't go with it because it's been over a period of lives. So I started writing letters to my dear philosopher whenever I got in a jam and just needed some kind of help.
guidance.
And Jackie, the amazing thing was, every time I wrote a letter and I said, I'm at a crossroads, I don't know what I'm doing at the moment, I just feel a bit lost. And I would really pour myself out and sign it, something would happen that day. It never failed over all these years. There was just something. And I just knew that it confirms, and we don't have to have it confirmed, that we are so looked after.
Yeah.
And if we don't ask the angels, the higher beings, if we don't ask for help, we don't get help. They're just sitting there waiting for us to call on them and to build that relationship that we have.
Love that, Joe. Do you know, I went to the spiritual church. You came with me Friday night at the spiritual church, and I did ask that question because they are there and they do want to help us. But how often do we remember to ask?
Exactly. And if you
That's
don't
lovely.
ask, you don't get.
Yeah. And it might not be in the way that you expect the help, but they know for our greater good what's needed.
Well, and Jackie, sometimes I've been sitting trying to do something and banging my head against a wall and would write a letter. And then all of a sudden, maybe somebody would just send a funny little clip on the phone, or there would just be something where someone was thinking about you. And that made all the difference. But it was really, really meaningful up at Stansted. And then we went to the College of Psychic Studies in London.
What name is that? I know Edward. Is it someone Edwards? I've not been to that one. Harry Edwards?
Yes, yeah. But
Harry Edwards.
yes, it's a place where they train their classes, and you train to become, a medium. I didn't go for that reason, but the doctor lectured there several times, and it just became a place that was so connected to, well, it was connected to Arthur Findlay College, but really, really meaningful.
How funny, I've never been there, never. Well, I don't say I've not been drawn. I suppose if the opportunity arose, I would go there. But yeah, I've been to the Arthur Findlay.
Yeah.
We're going on Monday, May the 6th.
The 6th.
Yeah,
Yes.
the bank holiday. I'll just show this. I know you're going to tell some more about this, but this is the Arthur Findlay College.
Yes.
Stunning, isn't it?
And Jackie, it is really I can highly recommend as many people going as you can manage, because it's really, really interesting. It's a very warm, friendly environment. They have talks, and they have a lecture hall, and they have talks, and it was always very meaningful. Plus, they have you can go in for a reading.
So that just what you're saying, really. On these, it's an open weekend, so I think they're doing Monday through Tuesday. Sorry, Saturday through to Tuesday. But we're going on the Monday. But it gives you all these options, or you can pay an extra £10 and go. So if it on the loft, for instance, when it gets a loft and an asterisk, you can pay for those an extra £10 because there's only 20 of you in the room. But there's also at those same times you can choose the free ones. Well, your entry tickets within the price of what we're doing on that day. So speaking in the power of spirit with Penny Hayward, or finding the relationship with Suzanne Gibson Foy, they're the free options. You can choose out of those two. Or yeah. Oh no, and oh yeah, and then the next time slot at 12, you can choose again what you'd like to do. And at the 12 o'clock one, you can pay the extra letting go and letting spirit work in the loft, which is the £10 extra. Otherwise, it's within the. So, I mean, it's £50 for the day. We're going from Totton or Southampton. So that's for the coach and for the ticket to get in.
That's absolutely amazing. Really,
Honestly, yeah.
amazing. Yes. And they have a gift shop. They have various things, and it is such it's like a massive nodal point for energy. And I don't know, it just absolutely changed my life to know
Really?
that I had somebody that I had been connected with for a long time over a period of lives that were trying to do something with me. And I felt, come on, Joe, just get on with it. And, we've got these blocks that we don't know.
Yes.
And these attitudes that we carry around with us in a big knapsack in the back.
Yeah.
And, but it was a real door opener. And sometimes I think when you go to a place like Arthur Findlay College, you go in with no intention, not expecting anything, just expecting the right thing to happen. And being with all those like-minded people traveling up in a bus.
Exactly.
I just really recommend. I think it's going to be amazing.
Well, the last one I went to, it was just before the lockdown time, the year before, and we went up there. There was a chap from Newcastle, Philip Robinson, I think his name was. Well, I'm still friends with him on Facebook, so I think it's Philip Robinson. And he did I went into a lecture. So Darren Orlasky, very good medium, he was in the room, but there was loads of people in the room, and it was a discussion about is mediumship killing spirituality? I think it was called something like that. But it was that memorable because the whole conversation, and the point is, when you go to the spiritual church, you can sit there and hope for a message and hope for a message from loved ones. But what I used to love to go to was listening to the philosophy of it all.
Yes, yes.
When you can ask the question. So like on Friday night, that medium gave the opportunity for us to ask questions, which I absolutely love. And so I just said, I've heard that we've got a guide or a guardian angel with us from the moment we're born to the moment we die. And we need to ask for help, if we want any help, to remember that they're always there and they're waiting to help us. And I said, would they be frustrated at the fact that we don't ask, that we, just forget that connection and just trust that they're impelling us in some way to take the next step, but they do need us to ask. And so I said, would it be frustrating for them? And he said, no, it wouldn't be frustrating because it's your choice. But obviously for you to, make the most of it, like you've said, now you've written those letters, you got the guidance that was needed.
Yes.
It's
Well, and also, it's not that you are the only one that they are overshadowing. They are overshadowing a number of people, just like the doctor was overshadowed. And it wasn't just one, but it's that one you connect with.
yes, but you have a whole team, do you? But there's one specifically that's with you through every incarnation.
Yes. The reason I hesitate with that, I think sometimes, and I could be wrong, I don't know, but sometimes if you achieve a certain point, or if you achieve a certain purpose in this lifetime, they will go on and hand you over to someone else. And this is why some people feel I think the other night we talked about walk-ins.
Yes.
And I did have a friend who was part of a group in the UK that remembered when he was a teenager, all of a sudden something happened. His whole attitude, his whole demeanor changed. And when he went and asked the question, what happened? He said, that's when the soul changed over. And it was like a walk-in. I don't know what all that.
I mean, there was a couple there last night that had never heard of a walk-in. So for anyone that's watching, what I believe a walk-in is, because I'd done a couple of talks. I don't know if you were, because bless him, he's passed over now, Franco De Nicola. Yeah, I've done a couple of talks in the past with him, and he was a walk-in, but his partner, Kimberly, has had 5 walk-ins.
Yes.
In this incarnation. And I don't know if it's the same for each one, but it's where your soul, you've really had enough of this incarnation and you're considering another option.
Yes.
And that's when you have an agreement, a soul contract, where you will swap over with another soul. And in actual fact, Ellie is that. Ellie is a walk-in.
It's really interesting. And I know both of us think that, you know, sometimes you can get so detailed in trying to understand something that is universal.
Yeah.
But it's really, really it's amazing. I just love it. And the mediums, Gordon Higginson and Alec Harris, were materialization mediums. So they could produce enough ectoplasm, which is like a cloudy amorphous substance, so that materialized forms can form. And I know in South Africa, when my friend and my advisor was with a group of 20 doctors examining, they went to a medium to hear Alec Harris, and he went to poo-poo the whole thing because he was a scientist and he was a medical doctor, etc. And he went and he said, nah, I'll show them. And then they had, he was in a closed area with a curtain. There was a wall behind him, and he was sitting in the very first row. And all of a sudden, after they did the chanting and the raising, closing of their eyes and the raising of the vibration, this form started to appear. And with being with 20 doctors there, they could examine them. They could put their hand through them. They could take their pulse. They could speak to them. There were young kids. There were older kids. There was an American Red Indian, and they would converse. And they had personalities. They had blood pressure, but you could put your hand right through them. And he said that when they started to lose the ectoplasm,
Yeah.
they would start to dissolve,
Mm.
and they would start speaking very slowly and drift back to the floor, and then they would chant and get, you know, the energy back up again. But really, really meaningful.
Have you ever witnessed that at all?
I've witnessed something that was close, but not like that.
No, no.
I've had a couple. When I was in my early 20s, there was somebody who was working in the same place I was, and they knew I was interested in this woo-woo stuff, as David Hamilton calls it. And they said, would you like to go to this seance, this medium? And I said, yes. And it was interesting because I went and I was told that, you know, once the lights go out and you start chanting, then you can't leave. You have to stay there.
Yes.
Well, I was at an age where I went, they started chanting, and they turned out all the lights and it was dark. And I had a flashback from the birth process and various things. And I just turned to my friend and I said, I can't stay here. I've got to get out of here. This is not right for me at the moment. And she said, you can't leave. And then all of a sudden this voice said, Joe, I know you, you may go.
Oh.
And I just ran out of there and ran back to the group. And it was interesting because I'd had something materialize in front of the bed or at the foot of the bed. And I didn't know what to do, but I had been trained and I knew enough to say that if you're not of the Christ, be gone.
Oh, yes.
And that was those were my only two, you know, two experiences, but they were enough to give me a confidence that when people do have experiences, you listen, because you might not go along with it, but if it's a reality to them, it's a reality.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
I think more people now are becoming more aware of dimensionals and other dimensions and being able to talk about it with a degree of confidence and ease. Because if you, Jackie, you know, if you have an experience, and it's true to you. Nobody can, and that's what they call empirical knowledge. You don't have to have a scientific background, but it's true to you and you know that it exists. If you have a healing using some modality, you can say, for me, it worked.
Yes.
That worked for you, but it works for me, and I, acknowledge it.
That's exactly it. It's discernment and what feels right for us. It's always back to that, isn't it?
Yes.
I've just remembered why I talked about Philip Robinson as well, because he was so interesting. He was such a young lad, and he was so interesting. And I invited him to come. He lives in Newcastle, and I invited him to come down here if he wanted to do a workshop with John Taylor. John Taylor's a marvelous medium. And John agreed to it. I'd already said to John about it. And then he came all the way from Newcastle for this particular workshop. And his thing was, same as Matt last night kept talking about the music, the vibration, uplifting music to, bring the spirits forward, because they love, you get a better. And like you say about the cabinet, I've been in a situation, I've told you the story about me in the cabinet, and all the phenomenal things that happened while we were in there. Anyway, so it was a marvelous. Philip stayed with us the night, and then that must have been the time before last that I went, because then the next time that we went there, Philip was there again, which was lovely to see him. He stayed with us for that weekend. Yeah, and yeah, even Joe, who's not particularly open to, although he does believe, I think. But he found a very interesting conversation with this young lad as well. It was amazing to get young people interested in it and to know that it's, what's true for them.
That's right. That's right. Really, really. And I remember that my friend used to be able to produce ectoplasm, and he would have things happen at night, and he would talk about them. And we thought, let's get some of this on film if we can, and just film it, because one day he was on a lecture tour and I was keeping an eye out, and there was somebody working on the house, and he rushed downstairs and he says, who was that man in the suit that came upstairs? And I said, there wasn't a man in the suit that came up. It was an entity, if you want to call it that. That's not maybe not the right word, but it wasn't there. And I walked up because I thought maybe somebody had come in the house, and there was nobody there, and it really just freaked him out. And we tried to document some of these things that were materializing, and the only way that we could think about it was I put a 6-foot mirror up against the wall and sprinkled it with baby powder, because I thought it might be a way that somebody could just, easily
Yes.
draw an astral finger across it. And it didn't happen, but I just thought it was really, really interesting. And now, with so many people having experiences, this is the new norm.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Well, I would love to tell the story. Shall I just tell it quickly about me with the cabinet?
Oh, yes.
So, Joan and Gwen, who helped me with when I used to do the positive living in person, Joan would come along most weeks, Gwen quite often as well. And they said they'd like to go to this chap who does the cabinet. So you sit in a cabinet in the dark, he's in a cabinet strapped in with a curtain around him. And then you have, like, I think there was 7 of us on the outside but in their log cabin. And so I thought, well, if Joan and Gwen want to go, that it must be all right. But then a friend of mine said, oh, you better not do that because it can bring in the wrong sort of spirit. So I said to the chap who was running it, and funny enough, he was at Totton Spiritual Church the other day. I hadn't seen him for ages, years actually. But anyway, I said to him and he said, oh no. And he told me all the people that were attending that night. And I said, oh no, not the people. I'm talking about bad spirit energies coming. And he said, oh, that's, you know, he said, well, wait, come along with them. I drove them there and listen to whatever I say. And if you've got any doubts, then don't come down to the cabin. So sure enough, that's what we did, because I knew I could stay in the conservatory. And so went there, listened to all what he said, and I thought, oh, this is too exciting for words. I'm going to the cabinet, to the log cabin. And went in there and he had the loud music. He said it'd start with loud music. I checked one arm that was tied in. Gwen checked the other arm that was tied in. And then it was in complete darkness, other than they had lit up, you know, when you can get those toys that just light up a bit, illuminated toys.
Yes.
So you could just see that there was a few illuminated toys that had been still lit from the light that was there before. And then there was like a hula hoop hung on the wall behind me. There was a wooden chime up above me there, and different toys on the floor, you know. So yeah, didn't think any more of it. But I was a bit, you know, thinking what was going to happen. Anyway, he started the music and it was real good, you know, Michael Jackson, real upbeat, good music. And within seconds of that happening, this wooden chime banged up against the ceiling and come down again and was chinking. I screamed. He said, who screamed? I said, I'm so sorry. I never dreamt anything would happen that quick. So that was the first thing. That I'll just tell you briefly. The hula hoop come off the wall. It went past my hair, just touched my hair as it went past. And when the light come on, you could just see exactly where it landed. So there was a drum on the floor, a very lightweight drum, tiny little drum. And it landed directly over this drum perfectly. But with the speed that it had gone past my head and landed there, not a human, anyway. Then the big thing, there was so much, but the big thing was, well, tennis balls landed on my lap, and again I did a little shout out. Anyway, then something he said made me say, oh, it was 34 years ago today my dad passed away. And then he said, Steve, who was in the locked in, he said, have we got Jackie's dad here? And there was an almighty bang at the side of the...
Oh gosh, I got confused.
Yeah, but my dad would never have frightened me like that. He never would have, I know, but it did frighten me. And again, I shouted. Anyway, so that was that. But the woman next to me said to the woman next to her, they were friends that had come together. I'd never met them. And she said, oh, perhaps your mum's here, Sue. And with that, he said, now have we got Sue's mum here? And with that, her chair, with her on it, shot into the middle of the room. You had to be there to believe it. And with her friends said, oh, are you all right, Sue? And her chair shot into the middle of the room. So then Steve said, oh, come on, spirit, we need to calm down now. We don't want anyone getting hurt. So he said to these two ladies, would you like to get up and bring the chair back? They stood up and the chairs went back on their own and they went back and sat down.
As they would do.
Exactly. I mean, you know, just unbelievable. And then even when the lights went on, he had an alphabet. He was hoping that they had picked up and wrote some words with the alphabet, little tiny wooden alphabet numbers. And he said they might even spell some words out because they've done that before. Anyway, his partner picked up the alphabet and said, no one's made it. With that, an E jumped out. I mean, he was holding it. I could see it clearly. And the E jumped out and fell on the floor. And my dad was earnest. I don't know, but you know, that was nothing compared to what else had happened. But yeah, it was quite incredible. It was so memorable. And then I remember the next morning I was walking Monty with Joe. And I said, don't say anything. I'm going to tell you where I went that last, because if he'd known, he wouldn't have wanted me to go. And but it was so exciting, and I've heard him tell people about it because he knew from how you know, I just find it so fascinating, anything like this, Joe.
Absolutely. And it happens to the degree that you can accept it.
Yes.
So for those who are listening and are going to Stansted, you will only get and receive what you can understand. And that's the important thing. You're not going to be bombarded by entities coming from every different direction.
No, no, no.
But
Well, yeah.
it's really worth the trip in order to put yourself into an environment where your intention can bring whatever is needed for you at the moment.
Yes. I mean, it's years, obviously it was since my dad passed away in 83 that I was already interested, because my mum had an interest in spirituality, but obviously that excelled it. Yeah, I was definitely interested to find out more about it. So it's been an ongoing process. I love asking the questions, and and you'll get different answers from different people, and then you discern for yourself what resonates with you as truth.
Yes, yes. And I know with some of our group, Jackie, if on a number of occasions I've been involved in something and I think, God, this is really amazing. It's extraordinary. And then someone who we all know and love said, well, actually, and gave a completely different opinion. And I thought, now that's really meaningful because it gives you that objectivity, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Not to get caught down in the stream, but to be, well, that was, that's interesting. And sometimes with these experiences, they are best left to percolate until we integrate them. That's why sometimes when people say, what happened to you, or like last night, it could be, did you experience anything? Did something happen? Well, if it did, you don't talk about it right away because you lose that energy.
Yes.
And you just let it percolate and see what comes of it. And then sometimes, it's best just to keep quiet. I know when I was a teenager, and my grandparents lived in the back of the house. And one night, in the middle of the night, I got up and I walked into my folks' bedroom and I said, I think you better go down. Granddad's just died. And they went down. They were a bit surprised. They went down and he had just passed. And I got a bollocking. What are you doing out in the middle of the night? Well, I wasn't out in the middle of the night. I just knew. But you have a couple of those things when you're younger and you think, right, be a little bit discriminating about what you say.
Oh my gosh, but you did know that then.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It was just that you just knew it.
Have you done any spiritual courses, Joe, like for linking with spirit and to be a medium?
No,
Haven't you?
no.
I mean, I have, and I probably feel I could, but it's having the confidence, because you want to, you don't want to. I remember working at Marks and Spencer's many years ago, and there was a woman that had a reading when she was, I don't know, in her late 20s, who told her she wouldn't live past 40. They would never do that now, never. And of course, she was on thinking like that, but she was like 60 odd when I knew her. But she said it feared her for all those years until she was 40 and got past 40.
Yes. Oh,
So you hear things like that, and it's so unfortunate, because that would never be allowed today.
no. And when you see people, I always quote in myself some of these people that you see on the computer on Facebook, or not on Facebook, but on YouTube, 100-year-old women on doing gymnastics.
Yes.
And you think, God, that's amazing, and
Yes.
when somebody comes up and says, well, you're past 40 now, so these things are going to be happening.
Yeah.
No, they're not going to be happening because I don't let them happen. We
And
don't let them happen.
that's it. It's the mindset, isn't it? It's the belief and the mindset. and
Yes,
change every negative to a positive, and
that's right.
as much as you can, because that's going to be. So I read yesterday somewhere where what your life is like is dependent on what you eat, on
Yeah.
what you watch, on what you read,
Yes,
and on your actions that you take. You know, so it's got to be the best of everything in your world, in your reality, to have the best experience of your life.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. And when you get to the point where I always learn this technique. Do you know Roberta Alcigioli, the astrologer,
I've heard you mention, I don't know.
humanistic astrologer? He had a technique, and when people would come to him to talk about their problems, etc., he would tell them to write it out. If you've got a problem with someone, address it, date it, write it out, and just pour your heart out. Use all the language that you want to use, and then sign it, and then burn it. And the brain doesn't know that you've actually resolved that situation. And when I first met David Hamilton in 2012, and he said the brain can't distinguish between what you think, what you feel, what you imagine, what you see, I thought that was really, really interesting. And so sometimes if you write something down, it grounds it, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because who was it, Mel Robbins or somebody connected to Lynn McTaggart that came up with the 5-second rule and said, if you have an idea and an inspiration to do something and you don't do it, within 5 seconds, the brain will talk you out of it.
Mm.
And
Yes.
that was been really, really an important little tool in the toolbox.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing this, Joe. Was there any other stories you wanted to share about
No,
Stansted?
I think that's really, really, it'll just be a great day.
Honestly, I'm so looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Everyone I've been to so far has just been amazing.
No,
So
it'll be
yeah,
really, Becky.
thank you so much, Joe.
Hey, thank you.
Okay. And
Okay,
thanks to anyone watching. Speak to you soon, no doubt.
okay, bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.